So hello everybody and welcome to our webinar, How to Prepare Your Network for a New Future. Whilst we've decades of experience of home working in BT, with this type of webinar is new to us. We've usually got a studio with expert cameramen and expert editors to make us look good and a bit of makeup to take the glare off my forehead. But we're all working in new ways. I've made sure my children are not using the Wi-Fi, and so let's dive in straight to the webinar. Everyone's talking about a new future or a new norm. Today we're going to explore what that means for the network, which many of our organisations rely upon. We talk about the steps you probably have already taken to keep operations going, what's next to deliver the right experience, and how do you prepare for either the next crisis or the long-run impacts of the current one. My name is Jonathan Sumner and I lead the portfolio marketing for networking and cloud in BT, and I'm delighted to be joined by Gary Barton, who's the principal analyst for Global Data, Scott Cowling, who leads on the network portfolio for BT Global, and Wouter Belmans,
to be here.
Wouter Belmans, who leads on BT's Global's consulting organisation.
Hi, John.
Hi. So let's start with Gary. What network challenges is coronavirus driving for large organisations across the globe?
Hi, yeah, no, it is a great question. I mean, I think we're seeing some really vertical specific challenges. So I think, so for example, if you take the retail industry, that's an industry that's been particularly badly hit, I think. A lot, not able to open the high street or main street stores, so they're having to deal with a large number of connections, and they're having to sort of see whether they can address the costs of those, and then try and shift to much more so an online way of trading and customer service when they can't do the sort of in-store experience. But I think we're also seeing some more general trends for that are affecting in a more horizontal way. So I think companies are experiencing new pinch points in the network. We're seeing with, for example, VPNs are under pressure, because they're just not designed to have these sort of thousands of new home workers using them. So the VPNs, whether they've got the capacity, and then beyond that, we're seeing if there's an internet breakout from that VPN, a corporate internet breakout, and there's not necessarily capacity there. So companies having to look, can we increase the capacity of that breakout? Can we put in new traffic patterns to try and direct more of that traffic, the less sensitive traffic, away from the corporate VPN? But it's just a much more distributed infrastructure that people are dealing with. The people hadn't considered dealing with the number of connections now. It was sort of usually tens of offices on fairly large connections, not hundreds and thousands of largely sort of ungoverned public internet connections. So it's a very new world for enterprises.
And Scott, we're constantly monitoring our own network. Are we seeing those same pinch points and traffic patterns?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing to say is we haven't designed and architected our network for sunny days. We've designed and architected it with situations like we're currently in mind. So the peak capacity that our network can handle is well below the current peaks in demand that we're seeing are still well below the total capacity for our global network. Now, what we are seeing is a shift in the profile of the traffic, across the course of the day, which is reflecting new ways of working for our customers. When we look at the pure sort of corporate on-net MPLS traffic, as no surprise to anyone, we are seeing a decline in that. We're seeing sort of a 15% decline from what we would normally see, and that's understandable given that we know that corporate offices are being closed down. They're sitting empty. Unfortunately for some of our customers, even main manufacturing plants are being shuttered. Conversely, though, we're seeing a huge growth in demand for internet and upgrades to VPN gateways. In fact, over the past couple of weeks, we have been completing dozens and dozens of logical port upgrades, and that's everything from relatively low bandwidths, going from 20 to 40 meg, but also at the very high end for some of our customers, really critical sites, upgrading from 10 to 40 gig ports. And I'm very pleased to say that, in the vast majority of cases, we're able to do that in a couple hours. In fact, for one global pharma company, we were able to double their VPN capacity to enable over 30,000 employees to work from home in just over 24 hours.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Wouter, are companies doing the right thing though in rushing to just upgrade their internet connections?
And absolutely they are, John. Absolutely they are. I mean, we see companies going through this in different ways, but we certainly see a similar journey across companies, right? And the first two steps, they are reactive. The first step is about crisis management. Typically, make sure that your employees are okay. Make sure you deal with health risks and health issues. And the second step is what Gary and Scott have been talking about, is the business continuity planning, adapting the work environment and adding capacity to enable it. I think for most companies, for most of the customers that we deal with, these stages are about done now, right? They were necessary. The time of firefighting was important, but it's largely over. And I think a lot of companies are now taking a step back and looking at different things in their environment. We would recommend the first thing to look at is the experience of home workers. So most companies have moved a lot of workers into the home, remote working. How was the experience of these workers for core applications? How was the experience in terms of collaboration tools, including video? And from what we are hearing and seeing, the experience is not in all cases great, and that needs to be investigated.
That's great. Gary, you talk to our customers and other organizations every day. What are the challenges they're facing in delivering that experience?
Yeah, it's a great question, because and I think as Wouter was saying, that we've gone through this initial phase and companies are focused on just rolling out, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams as we're using, and in a way just to get internal communications working, the VPNs to allow access to corporate services, whether it's applications or corporate data, and increased use of public cloud to sort of help bring applications that may have been privately hosted or bring them into sort of new accessible formats. But now I think this is the time they need to start looking at the experience that the employees are having. So I think we need to look at network performance, application performance monitoring and enhancement. I think some of the traditional models, we need to move away from those. So the traditional sort of the application performance is outside the network, it's pinging the application. We need to look at more solutions that are based inside the network, providing a more end-to-end solution. We need to look at the challenge of how you monitor the quality across these multiple internet access services that aren't provided by the corporate. It's not part of the corporate solution. The private consumer solutions usually. And we need to look at the capabilities that the service providers, network operators have inside the network to sort of dynamically shift loads and traffic flows, and the way they can provide sort of an orchestration layer to manage that, and then help the customers still see what's going on through advanced customer portals.
Scott, I mean, those solutions that Gary just talked about, are BT looking at developing those solutions for our customers where they're using home workers across their own internet service?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Gary just talked about there really resonates strongly, and obviously we have a number of different approaches for the different challenges that our customers have. Certainly, across the corporate network, we've been leveraging our SD-WAN policies to very quickly change application routing policies to prioritize those apps that are really required for home working and critical access. But one area that I think has caught nearly everyone out by surprise, and it's proved to be a bit of a blind spot, is when home working, the reliance on, in most cases, having to deal with consumer broadband. And unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, if your household and all your neighbors are all streaming 3 different streaming services, there will be an impact. And the challenge is, how do we address that? So, one of the solutions that we're putting out there to our customers is a Riverbed UX solution. And in this solution, we're able to push out a mobile client to the customer's end user devices. So we're able to push out software to an employee's tablet, mobile, laptop, which then communicates back with the controller that's hosting our core network. And that then provides for that home worker app acceleration, but not only app acceleration, also the performance monitoring and visibility that's needed to then try and further fine tune the network to best enable what is now a much more distributed workforce.
I mean, that's very interesting. Wouter, from a consulting point of view, what advice would you give organizations implementing solutions like that, like the Riverbed solution Scott was talking about?
John, I think it's important not to just rush in and plan it well. And when I say plan it well, it's to make very clear what you want to achieve and make success look like. And when we deal with customers, we typically look at a couple of things, right? First of all, you start small and you start with a good sample of employees across persona types, across worker types, to make sure that the first findings you are representative of the full workforce. So that's number one. Second, you want to take a good baseline of, to understand what good performance and good experience looks like. So we typically take a sample of remote workers and local office workers, and we see how they compare. Third, people, when they have experience issues, they very quickly start blaming the network. And we find that in many, many cases, the network is not the issue. It can be a laptop memory issue. It can be a software issue on the laptop as well. So making sure that you're looking at the root causes of experience issues from the beginning is very key. Fourth, and it's already been mentioned, right? Look at non-business critical activities, especially when people are at home. Very often others are streaming services and so on that may impact the work environment, which may be non-desirable. And then last, but certainly not least, when you go into the remediation phase and you start fixing issues, focus first on your most critical employees. Maybe not everyone is suffering as bad as some. So figure out who are your most critical employees and start from there. And if you take that approach, typically you can do this and you can figure out where the issues are and solve them in a matter of days or weeks.
So we talked about the first stage, I guess the firefighting stage, and making sure you keep the lights on. We've talked about the second stage of giving people experience that they need to work from home. Wouter, I guess what's the next stage? What do companies need to look at next?
John, I mean, once you've kind of set your employees up, typically companies start to look at the fact that they've introduced a hell of a lot of change in a very short time, maybe not using the change management process always in the best way, right? And so a good thing to do is to take a step back and understand whether you've caused any issues by these rapid changes. You look at security, right? Have you caused any security gaps through the rapid change in topology of the network? You look at home working. Are workers effective? It's good to give them a good IT experience, but do they have the work environment that they need? Do they have an environment with the kids around and so on that enables them to be successful? Are they in touch enough with work, or are they feeling lonely? These kind of things are important. And then, of course, it's important to look at your IT service centers and your contact centers, because often the load on these environments has changed, has shifted, and very often you need to also change the focus of resources in those environments. When that's done, or simultaneous to that, John, it's not good to look at the immediate term. You gotta look at the medium to long term as well. And the question immediately comes up, what are we gonna do to get back to normal? And when I say normal, I mean, most people agree that this is gonna be a new normal, right? We're never gonna go back to working the way we've always done. And then the question becomes, what does the new normal look like when we come out of this crisis? And we think about things like the relationship between home working and remote working. Are as many people going to go back into the office space as they used to? We're thinking about business travel. Do we really need to travel that much? Why were we able to not travel at all for so long and still be successful, right? We're thinking at things like the field force. In BT, as you know, we have a very big field force, which we try to minimize the truck rolls they need to do through remote diagnostics. And when they go out, you need to bring them out there safe into the customer environment. So we've learned about that. What's the long term of that going to look like? And then, of course, John, risk management. Will pandemics become part of the new normal, and how do we get ready for the next one, right? And these things and many more you need to think about. The future is very uncertain, so we certainly recommend that people do some scenario planning around these things.
So Gary, in terms of what solutions are out there in terms of the market, what do you think people should be looking at for some of those to support that new normal, as Wouter was talking about?
Yeah, well, firstly, I mean, I would say that, you know, Wouter's point about take the time to assess what you need, we would, Global Data would absolutely wholeheartedly back that. I think, you know, these are going to be long-term solutions. It's not just a knee-jerk reaction to COVID-19 now, it's looking at what happens beyond that in very different profiles. So we'd absolutely say take the time to look at what you want to do and long-term planning for this. You know, it will be worth that investment of time as we come out of this crisis. And I think there are a number of technologies that will that have been around but start to play a role in different ways and more important ways. So, you know, for example, SD-WAN, it's not necessarily been a feature of the home working environment, but we have seen certain verticals that have deployed it. For example, if you look at manufacturing or design, or in medical, where you've got doctors looking at large files, and design, it can be, you know, accessing CAD files. Those sorts of processes where you really need to access large files, but quickly and securely. And SD-WAN can help there for certain types of employees. And we've seen some of the vendors offering, you know, up to 500 free seats, for example, on a trial basis for sort of 90 days, so they can help. And I think that zero-touch provisioning element of SD-WAN will be really popular going forward. I think, you know, there's some of the concerns about safety, as Wouter was saying, will be there for a while, but also just the convenience of it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that UCPE or virtualized network functions will be the way forward. I actually think in a way that COVID-19 will reduce the need for that, because if you have a universal CPE device at a big corporate office, then it can work in the commercial models. But these devices are quite expensive, and certainly more expensive than you think about deploying to sort of home workers. And I also think the commercial models don't quite work. With a more distributed workforce environment, I think we're going to be looking at more network-based solutions. So whether that's network optimization, whether it's security, and then also things like network edge compute, I think will start to play a role, because that can help overcome some of the limitations of home broadband solutions. But it will take a different view of where we put this capability. So perhaps looking away from city centres towards more residential areas, which is easier in some countries like, say, the UK or the Netherlands, which are a bit more densely populated and are more difficult in others. And I also think it may really strengthen the user case for 5G, because it offers, you know, once 5G gets going, it offers different ways to offer sort of SLAs and performance capabilities through network slicing. And it also offers a way to take the pressure off the residential broadband market. So I think there are a number of opportunities that will be there to be explored for enterprises.
Great, and I think, Scott, you've been illustrating the pressure of the local broadband market just there and the importance of the network connection. What would you feel are the kind of key network developments that should support that new normal that you're looking at from a BT point of view?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a couple here. So certainly, sorry, I'm also demonstrating the joys of home working with background noise. Certainly from an SD-WAN perspective, obviously SD-WAN has been going for some time, but I think that this is really going to be a catalyst for, you know, even faster adoption, in the sense that, you know, you can actually respond more quickly to sort of major network needs as a result. I think one of the sort of nuances is that I think SD-WAN, cloud-hosted SD-WAN controllers are going to become much more compelling. The other area then is in VNFs. I think it's fair to say that we have seen, you know, very, very modest acceleration or traction in in VNF adoption or large-scale VNF adoption. But I think that actually VNFs now, and particularly I would argue, VNFs cloud hosted or sitting at the cloud head ends are really going to become more relevant to customers, and it might once and for all actually, you know, determine the debate between whether VNFs will be, you know, on-prem hosted or really cloud hosted. I guess the third point then, when it comes to technology, and you know, Gary had alluded to it before. Also, then the importance of supplemental point solutions, shall we say, for home working, and the need to consider app acceleration as part of a broader network resiliency design. Now I've talked about a couple different technology ones there, but I think equally important are some commercial developments that are no doubt going to take place. The fact of the matter is, after the current sort of immediate crisis ends, and we're no longer all worried about police drone following us if we spend a few too many minutes outside, our customers are going to have to rebuild their balance sheets, and I think we need to be able to put out commercial developments that really maximize, as a service offerings, very flexible OpEx offers that help our customers get back to a secure position and without having to take on undue financial risk when they're already suffering. I think the final observation that I would make is that, certainly what we've seen with our customers are those that have had a very federated network and IT strategy have struggled a bit more to respond to the current situation. More moving parts, more autonomous decisions were being made, and I think the current crisis might actually push companies back into thinking about a more holistic global network and IT approach to ensure that there is a consistent UC capability for workers, to ensure that you can put out or implement new network policies very quickly. And certainly those customers that we support with a single global strategy, have been able to actually adapt to the current situation a little less painfully.
Okay, I mean, we've got coming to the end of the webinar now. I guess there are a whole range of other things that we could have talked about, such as security in detail and the skills that are required. Just to touch on them, we could have dedicated a whole webinar to it, like I said, but security, Scott, that's a key important factor when you're looking at the network transformation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely massive, and I think it's only going to become more important. As more customers look to SD-WAN as a means of lowering their costs in what is no doubt going to be a financially restrained period, and adopt more internet. There are increased security considerations. Similarly, with increased home working, the fact of the matter is, people just are in a slightly different mindset and perhaps aren't as conscious about security considerations when working from home. So all this means that actually there's going to be a new expectation for enhanced native security in solutions. I think there's going to be a lot more around DDoS to help protect, but also I think there's going to be an expectation that there's much more native cloud-based security in solutions. The old zone-based perimeter security solutions just don't work when suddenly you have a workforce that is totally distributed, either from home or even just more in a remote working environment.
Gary, are you seeing the same with the conversations you're having with your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd echo everything that Scott said on the security point of view. We're seeing that customers are reaching out more for advice, and I think there are other technology areas they can look to as well. So we think that AI is going to have a growing role. We've already seen it really come to the fore in the contact center world, but I think now for businesses trying to assess how their customer base is changing, how customer behaviors are changing, trying to review their current IT stacks. I think some of these AI technologies will help with that, and the understanding from a consultative point of view, from data analytics in terms of all the data sets we have internally inside the customers, but also from the network point of view in terms of being proactive, in terms of fault detection, automatically responding to sort of problems with application performance, and from a security point of view, from fraud detection in a increasingly online world as well. So I think there are a range of technologies that'll help.
And Wouter, Scott talked about commercials a little earlier. You're having similar conversations, I guess, with your customers as well.
Well, I mean, John, what we're finding is that there's a danger, right? There's a danger that you spend all your time as a company looking inwards and thinking, how do we deal with this immediate change of my internal environment? And there's a reality as well. The reality is that the markets will start ticking up again, and we will come through this crisis. And when that happens, what will have happened, as somebody pointed out to me yesterday, is that the supply in the market will not have changed a lot. We will not have created a lot of new products. There will no products that have gone. So the supply is the same, but the demand in most areas will have decreased quite a bit. And so there's a reality there. There's going to be the same amount of players fighting for a lower amount of demand. So it's going to be the same game, just meaner, just harder. And so it's important that you come back out there really prepared with a marketing plan that's differentiated, that really talks to the new requirements of customers. And, you know, as Scott mentioned, prepared with pricing and commercial strategies that adapts to the new financial restraints of your customers.
That's great. Wouter, Scott, Gary, thanks very much for your contributions. We've got much more information around coronavirus and BT's approach, which you can see online on bt.com/global. We've got much more information obviously around our network services as well, which you can see on bt.com/dyness. I think the important factor to say is we're as BT, we're here to help. We're all in this together, and so please reach out to your BT account manager if there's anything we've talked about today that can support your organization. Thank you.